Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for checking out the video. Southside Braves here. And today for you, I have a special episode of the RoDL previews. It is the final episode for the season. It is going to be our playoff special episode. So there's going to be a lot of new segments, and it's going to be an extra long episode. So I hope you stick around for the whole thing and enjoy it. If not, watch it in parts, however you want to do it. I hope you enjoy. A lot of work went into it. I appreciate all the members of the league that helped me put this together. There are a lot of different segments with other coaches involved. So, like I said, a ton of collaboration, ton of work. Hope it comes out well. Hope you all enjoy it. If you have any other segments you'd like to see me add next season, because I will be bringing this back next season for those coaches that are still a part of the RoDL come next season. If you have anything you want me to add, please let me know. I would definitely look into adding other segments. So all that being said, let's get right into this special episode. We're going to start off the way we normally do, and we're going to talk about the matchups from the last regular season week. Starting off with the first match, we had the Seattle Supersonics going up against the Hellblaze Volcaronas. This was an extremely important match. The Supersonics secure a win or secure a playoff spot with a win, and as you can see here, they did exactly that. They picked up a 5-3 win against the number one seed in that conference. Rhyperior picked up 2 kills. Drachi picked up their third. Torkoal picked up the one and only kill for the Volcaronas. Again, Volcaronas already had the number one seed clinched. This game meant absolutely nothing to them. Whereas the Supersonics clinched the number 4 seed with the win and actually secure a rematch between these two teams in round 1 of the playoffs. While these two were division rivals, and so that means they played twice in the regular season, the Supersonics were a replacement coach and were not around for that first match. So while these teams played twice, these coaches only played once. So Supersonics have the one win between the coaches going into the playoffs. So we'll see how that round 1 game goes. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the episode, and I can't wait to see it. All that being said, let's move on to the next match. Next match, we had the Pidgeys versus the Ammonites. The Pidgeys would make the playoffs with a big win and a Supersonics loss. As we already saw from the Supersonics, they did not lose, so this game ended up meaning nothing to the Pidgeys, but at the time of playing it, they didn't know that. So this 5-0 win was huge for the Pidgeys at the time. They thought it gave them a chance to make the playoffs, and it did, but unfortunately it just didn't work out. In this match, the Ammonites went for a bunch of bold predictions that just didn't quite pay off for them. As you can see in the play of the game here, Dracovish suspected a switch coming out of the Ninetales, went for a Draco Meteor, and unfortunately got KO'd by the Freeze Dry. So, like I said, Pidgeys gave themselves a chance to make the playoffs with a win. Didn't work out. I did think they played around that Dracovish very well in this match, the Pidgeys did. Ninetales, Alolan form, picked up 3 kills. Goodra and Rotom Wash both picked up 1. And Rillaboom picked up the 1 kill for the Ammonites. Really good game out of Pidgeys to end their season. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite get them to the playoffs. Moving on to match number 3. We had the Morpekos versus the Miltanks. This was another match between a non-playoff team versus a playoff team. But this one didn't go the way you would expect. The Morpekos came up with the win to increase their final record to 3-9. Ending the season on a win is always nice, whether you make the playoffs or not. Whereas the Miltanks had a couple errors. One of them actually is just not bringing Entei. They really had no answer for that Registeel. So no matter how this game went, he made a misplay here with the Silvally, as you can see on the screen. But really, I don't think it mattered what he did, because I don't think he had an answer for the Registeel. Not bringing Entei, I thought, right there, lost in the game. So, but again, this game meant very little to Miltanks. They will have a rematch with the Litwicks in round 1 of the playoffs. So, again, Morpekos end on a high note. Miltanks take this meaningless loss before the playoffs. And like I said, Registeel was really the player of the game in my eyes. Just the fact that he was there wins the game for the Morpekos. All right, moving on. Our next match was the Rampardos versus the Litwicks. And like the previous 2 weeks, the Rampardos did forfeit this match. The Litwicks go into the playoffs as the 2 seed in their conference. And again, I'm not going to mention much more about this. We're just going to move on to match number 5 between the Virginia Scizors and the Detroit Shock. This was another match that the Scizors, if they could dominate and get a loss from the Vikavolt, had a chance to make playoffs. As you can see here, that didn't quite go to plan. Big reason I thought was because the Serena provided so much pressure in this match. As you can see in this play of the game, the Power Whip from Serena does so much to Magmortar that it was insane. So the amount of pressure Serena put on that whole team was crazy. He did get a little lucky. I think Serena hit that Mag Mortar 4 times, 1 power whip, and I think 3 hits of the triple axel. So to not get flame bodied with any of that was a little lucky for him. But besides that, I mean, Serena just did so much. The Needle Queen continues to be a big pickup for the Shock. He got that a few weeks back, and it's been massive for his team. I think he dropped Drudagon and somebody else for it, if I'm right. And Needle Queen is providing so much more threat than Drudagon did for his team. This loss, like I said, does officially eliminate the Scizors from playoff contention. And the only 2 kills in the match, 1 came for Needle Queen and 1 came for Serena to improve the Shock's record to 10-2, tied for the best record in the league. They are going to be the 2 seed, though, dropping the tiebreaker to the Hydreigons. So, moving on to our next match. We had the Vikavolt versus the Molts, and I mentioned the Vikavolt could clinch a playoff berth with a win or a Scizors loss. The Scizors had already lost, so this game didn't mean anything. And I actually think this one came first, so I don't think he knew that at the time. But really, this match was one of the quickest of the week. This was over very quickly. Vikavolt did clinch that playoff berth. Cinderace just completely owned this match. He had the move set to Oko almost every mon on the Molts. Because of that, the Molts really couldn't get any footing at any point in this match. You'll see him Oko a couple of those mons in this play of the game. Again, I could have picked any of Cinderace's kills, to be honest. He kind of wrecked shop. Cinderace did go 4-1. Gardevoir picked up a kill, and Dragapult picked up the final one. Or, I think it was the second last. I think Gardevoir got the last, but those were the 6 kills. Clawitzer and Excavalier picked up the kills for the Molts. Vikavolt will be going into the playoffs as a 4 seed, getting to play the Hydreigons in round 1. Moving on to our next match. And it was my own. I'm going to be honest with you, this was a match between 2 non-playoff teams. Neither me nor the Raikus were going anywhere. So I actually did not get the match recorded. So this is the only time this season where I don't actually have video of my own match. So, a little weird. But my 2 best players throughout the season, Tapu Fini and Melmetal, really shined in my final match of the season. Tapu Fini with Choice Specs picked up 4 kills for me. Really just put in a ton of damage. Finally got a little bit out of Melmetal again with 2 kills, even destroying the Moltres, which I thought was kind of one of his better checks, but he was able to fight through it and get the KO there. For my opponent, he stuck in, like I said, I only won 2-0, very close game. His Latios, Sableye, and Sandaconda each picked up a kill respectively. So, good game to Volt and the Raikus. And again, 2 teams that won't be playing next week. But let's move on to our final match. We had the Blazikins versus the Hydreigons, 2 teams that will be playing next week. The Hydreigons pick up a 4-0 win here to clinch that number 1 seed in that conference, whereas the Blazikins will be the 3. Blazikins will be playing the Shock in the first round. Hydreigons will be playing the Vikavolts. Dragonite and Umbreon picked up the only 2 kills for the Blazikins, whereas Thundurus picked up 3 for the Hydreigons, Kabutops picked up 2, and Salamence picked up 1. So that Rain Core coming through once again for the Hydreigons in this win. So moving on, we will see our end of the season standings. So as you can see, our playoff teams are the Volcaronas, the Supersonics, the Litwicks, the Miltanks, the Shock, the Vikavolts, the Hydreigons, and the Blazikins. Top 2 in each conference have made it. Didn't necessarily have to be the case. You could have 3 from one and 1 from the other. But it did work out. The top 2 from each have made it. So, good effort to the Pidgeys, Ammonites, Rampardos, Morpicos, Scizors, Molts, myself, and the Raikus. Those are the teams that we will no longer see in this season. But I appreciated everyone playing and watching all the matches. And I know every coach puts in effort to win. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, myself included. So, moving on. We're going to have players of the week. In the Sword division, we had Rhyperior, who picked up 2 kills, I believe, in a huge match for the Supersonics in their win. For the Shield, we had Registeel. Again, just the fact that it was there, it was unkillable. Won that match for him. For the Shadow, it was easy. Cinderace just dominated, had to be there. And for the Ice, my Tapu Fini picked up 4 kills. So I think it's one of the very few weeks I gave it to one of my own Mons. But I thought I had to give it to my own Tapu Fini. For the second week in a row, I did give Coach of the Week to Iston in the Seattle Supersonics. He played great against the number 1 seed to clinch a playoff spot. So, I mean, the pressure of that match was huge. So, the fact that he got it done, I had to give him Coach of the Week for the second week in a row. So moving on to your league leaders at the end of the season. In kills, Tapu Koko leads the league at 15. He is your end of the season kill leader. Cinderace and Mew right behind him at 14, followed by Clefable and Dragonite at 13. Over in KD, Clefable and Tapu Koko tie on top with plus 12s. Thundurus right there at plus 11, and then a little bit behind you have Dragonite and Cinderace at plus 9 each. So what I'm going to do next is another one of those new segments. I'm going to give, I say of the year, but really should be of the season. But we're going to go Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and then a couple more. I have MVP and Coach of the Year as well. I appreciate the commissioners who allowed me to do this. I wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on anyone's toes, that they don't do their own awards. They mentioned the kill leader and the KD leader, but I wanted to go a little more in depth and name my own. So again, I'm the only one that had any say in these. These are just my opinion. They really don't mean anything, but I wanted to say congratulations to the owners of these Pokemon. And again, I thought these were my picks. I didn't want to give offensive and MVP to the same, so they are different. But yeah, let's jump into it. Offensive Player of the Year was right up there in the kill leaders. I believe it finished second, if I remember correctly. And didn't have much of a defensive backbone. It did die 5 times. But again, 1 kill behind the kill leader in the rankings or in stats. So I am giving Offensive Player of the Year to Cinderace. So that Cinderace from the Vikavolt paired up with the Dragapult was a huge threat. And like I said, because of that, especially because of the way it just ended the season with a massive kill game, I am actually giving that Offensive Player of the Year. Now, Defensive Player of the Year. If you watch these matches throughout the season, or as much of them as I did, Defensive Player of the Year had to come from one specific team, and that's the Volcaronas. They were by far the most defensive team of the season. They were so hard to kill, and so I gave it to who I found as one of their best performers, and one of their most defensive mons, even though it also picked up kills. Like, it wasn't just purely defensive. It also, I think, had 12 kills throughout the season. So, all that is to say that Defensive Player of the Year is going to Clefable from the Hellblaze Volcaronas. So, congrats to Lucas and his Clefable. And, yeah, moving on to the next awards. We have MVP and Coach of the Year. So MVP is somebody that was on top of both the kills and the KD. Not only did it pick up kills, but it didn't die. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say. It was part of a team that had the highest differential in the league, plus 30. So I mean, that's an insane number right there. The only reason I thought maybe I shouldn't give it to this Mon is because it had a sidekick. It had somebody else that was right up there in the stats with it. And that's the only reason I had hesitation. Honorable mention here, I did think very hard about giving it to the Thundurus from the Blattles team and the Hydreigons. I did not. I did give it to Tapu Koko from the Litwicks as the MVP of the season. He put in a ton of work for that team, and again, a team that destroyed the league in differential. So I did give MVP to Tapu Koko for the H-Men. So, that being said, I have one award left, and that is Coach of the Year. This was by far the toughest. I'm going to be honest, teams I thought about, Volcaronas and Lucas put up a great season. I thought Litwicks and the H-Man had a great season. Again, that crazy differential. I thought about Bosif and the Shock, tied for the best record in the league. I thought about Blattle and the Hydreigons. Again, they're the ones that are tied with for best record in the league. I'm going to be honest, it really came down to those 4 for me. There are a couple others that had good seasons. Those other playoff teams, good seasons. But Coach of the Year came down to those 4 for me. And when I look at it, I felt it had to be somebody. I liked the teams that had the best record. Coach of the Year is going to pick up a ton of wins and be consistent throughout. So even though Lucas and H-Man had great seasons, they were 1 game behind. So that means they had 1 more slip up at some point. So I did go between the 2 10-2 teams, and that was Bosif and Hydreigons and Blattle. And the Hydreigons won the head-to-head. Blattle won the head-to-head matchup. So just simply because of that, I'm giving the Coach of the Year to Blattle, coach of the Helgon Hydreigons. So, yeah, super close, like I said, though. All 4 of those teams and their coaches could have been Coach of the Year. I was very impressed by all of them, but I did end up giving it to Blattle. So those are my 4 awards: Offense Player of the Year, Defense Player of the Year, MVP, and Coach of the Year. Again, if you don't agree, that's fine. This was just my opinion. But I thought it'd be cool and fun for those coaches to get some of these awards. So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about the power rankings of just the playoff teams. All the teams that didn't make it, we're going to throw out, including my own, and we're going to talk about the power rankings. I did record that separately with a guest host for that segment. So, yeah, I'm going to throw it over to that part of the video. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, so next up for the video, we have the power rankings. And this week for the playoff episode, I am joined by Captain Beanard, coach of the Philadelphia Pidgeys. Thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me, and hello to all.
Yep, I believe you were the closest coach to making the playoffs that didn't quite get there. So, I mean, if I was
Yes,
going
I
to
was.
Yep.
I was in that fabled number 9 spot. So yeah, just barely got edged out in the last week, but it is what it is. It's all good, and I'm happy to be here to provide some now impartial commentary and opinions on this very heated playoffs that we're about to witness.
Absolutely. Glad you're here. All right, so we're just going to jump right into it, and we're going to start at number 8. Number 8, we have the team that edged out Beanard's team here, and that is the Seattle Supersonics. We do have their team MVP going to their Jirachi. They finished second in the Sword Division. They are the 4 seed over in the Armor Conference, and they are going up against the Volcaronas in the first round of the playoffs. So this was one of the teams in your division. How did you see their regular season going?
Well, this was actually one of those teams that it was an interesting situation because this was one of the 2 coaches that actually got replaced partway through the season. So I believe this guy came in, Icedan, I think is the coach. He came in, I want to say week 9, but I'm not 100% on that. And yeah, so he completely overhauled the team minus the Keldeo, I think it was, and he really turned the team and the season around because I believe the coach who was in the spot before was at that point like I want to say like 2-6 or something like that, or something close to that, or maybe 3-5. So he really turned the whole season around for the team, and ended up going either like 4-0 or 3-1 or something like that in the last few weeks that he had the team. So I give him a lot of props for that. Obviously, him edging me out, I wasn't super excited about that, but it was more power to him, for being able to do that. So I guess just looking specifically at the part of the season that he was on, I mean, he really went on a tear like those last few weeks. Like I said, he had a really, really strong showing those last few weeks. One of his victories was over me. One of his victories was over the team that won our division. So yeah, he's really been putting it together. I don't know a ton about the coach as a player, but from what I've seen, he really knows what he's doing. So, and the team is very well put together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a lot of leagues where a replacement coach can turn a team with a losing record like that into a playoff team. But talking with him, I did interview all the playoff coaches. I got to talk with the coach a little bit, and he really does know what he's talking about. He can go very detailed into his prep and stuff. So I have complete faith in that coach putting up good performances week in and week out, and that's what he had to do to make playoffs, and that's exactly what he did do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And yeah, he might have just barely snuck into the playoffs with that record, but again, he's definitely going to be a dark horse to watch in the playoffs because, like I said, his record might be 6-6 technically going into the playoffs, but if you look at his individual record since he took the reins of the team, it's like I said, I'm not positive if it's either 3-1 or 4-0. So he's been putting on a very strong showing since he took over the team. So even though on paper he might be considered the underdog, I definitely think he has a really strong shot to go all the way.
Yeah, and that's going to be put to test in the very first round as he's going up against Lucas and the Volcaronos, who a lot of coaches think is one of the toughest outs of the tournament. He's got that crazy defensive core there that lots of teams have struggled to break. What do you think of that round 1 matchup between the two?
Well, it's going to be really interesting, actually. And speaking to the Volcaronas, obviously, this is all or has all taken place in my division. So, yeah, were witness firsthand to what I called from the very beginning, and what I still believe to be the strongest defensive core of any team in the league, and that's the Volcarona's defensive core. The Dragon Fairy Steel with Zygarde, Clefable, and Celesteela, just insane. I played him twice, lost to him twice. The second time was, I think, a little closer. The first time just could not get through that defensive core. So it's going to be a very interesting match, not only for that reason, but also because obviously iStan actually just defeated Lucas in the week that just ended in order to sneak into the playoffs. So there's two schools of thought that you could take with this. One is, okay, well, Lucas has the better record, right? He's the division winner, right? But you could also counter that with, well, iStan just beat him last week. But you could also counter that with, well, Lucas was already locked into the, number one seed of that division. So maybe he wasn't taking the game as seriously as he could have. So, and then you could counter that argument with, iStan being, having such a strong showing since taking the reins of the team. And like you said, doing something that most coaches, or replacement coaches rather, are unable to do, which is turn a losing team into a playoff team. So there's a lot of different factors to consider in this match. And to be completely honest with you, this is the matchup that intrigues me the most of the quarterfinal matchups in this draft league, for all of those reasons. So in conclusion, I really don't know, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting game to watch. And to be honest with you, I could see it going either way.
Yeah, absolutely. So could I. I have a gut feeling in that last week matchup that I'm not gonna say Lucas didn't prep everything or bring everything he could to win, but my guess is he has some sets that he didn't want to show yet. I think he probably has some things under his sleeve for this matchup. I just
Oh, definitely. Could definitely be.
that defensive core is just so difficult to break. I'm just not sure the Supersonics have the firepower to do it. To be honest, I'm leaning towards the Volcaronas winning the rematch. But
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
yeah, but like you said, it's gonna be a great round one matchup between the two.
No doubt. No doubt.
All right, so let's move on to number 7. At number 7, we have the Grayling Vicavolts. We have their MVP as their Dragapult. They finished second in the Shadow Division, and they are the number 4 seed over in that division, going up against the number 1 Hydreigons in round 1. So I don't know if you had the chance to play this team in the regular season. I know I did play them once.
Yeah, the funny thing is, these two teams were actually both of my out of conference matches,
Oh,
were the
nice.
Vicavolts and the Hydreigons. Yeah, so I played both of them. Ironically, I actually did win the match with the Hydreigons and lost the match with the Vicavolts. Having said that, I actually think the Hydreigons are the stronger team, and if maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but I actually my pick to win this game, just based purely on what I've seen of both teams. But yeah, the Vicavolt's not taking anything away from them. It is a strong team. The coach definitely did what he needed to do to secure that playoff spot. Nice record, nice team. Very strong offensive presence on this team with like the Cinderace and the Dragapult, but then, well, the Gardevoir too, but then a very strong defensive presence on the game too. The Skarmory, the Rhydon, even the Ludicolo. So, yeah, I do like this team a lot.
Yeah, I know when I played him, we talked about in length how it is crazy in my mind that he got Cinderace and Dragapult on the top of his team. Those two provide so much offensive pressure for that team. Some when I got to talk to him in the interview and that, one of the things he talked about was how he's got to be more consistent. He talked about his season as a whole throughout the regular season, how he win one, lose one, win one, lose one. He says, I don't know if it's true. I bet it is, but says he doesn't know if he ever went on a winning streak bigger than 2. So just some inconsistencies, but when he's playing well and that team is working, it provides so much firepower.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I know a little something about inconsistency as far as the season goes. So I definitely can identify with him there. But yeah, it's I guess everybody has on weeks and off weeks, but Yeah, if he can get the team going, and like you said, just the sheer amount of offensive pressure that combination of Cinderace and Dragapult provides is just something that a lot of teams are going to have a hard time dealing with. But I will say, feeding into my previous statement, if there's a team that I think can handle that, it's probably the Hydreigans. So
Yeah, we talked
we'll
about some
see.
inconsistencies from the Vikavolt. The Hydreigons have been one of the most consistent teams in the league, if not the most consistent. So I'm with you. I am picking the Hydreigons in this one. I'm just going to go with the more consistent team. And personally, I said in my videos last 2 weeks, the Hydreigons are my pick to win the whole thing. So obviously, I'm going to pick them to win in the first round here.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with that. I feel like the Hydreigans, again, are probably the most consistent team in the league. The coach is, if I'm not mistaken, the winner of the last season of this league. So you'd be hard pressed to bet against them. I do think that there is maybe one or two teams, probably one team in particular, that would have a good shot at doing that. But we'll, get into that when we get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so moving on to number 6. At number 6, we have the Blazikins. Their MVP going to their Dragonite. And real quick, that was the only Mon that got sniped for me in the draft that I wanted. I had to settle for Como instead. But I really wanted that Dragonite, and it turned into Blaziken's MVP. He did finish second in the Ice Division. He is the number 3 seed, and he gets to go up against the Detroit Shock in round 1. So you mentioned the Hydreigons and Vikavolt being your two out-of-conference opponents. So that means you did not get a chance to play the Blazikins, correct?
Correct.
All right. So I'll talk a little bit more about them because I did play him twice. Coach Sen, I split with him. I beat him in week 1, I believe, of the regular season, and then lost to him in week 10, I believe is what it was when we played again. The big change to his team that I think really made a difference between week 1 and when I played him the second time is he picked up Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn is such a great defensive mon for his team. He had Tangrowth before, which does all right, but the addition of Ferrothorn over Tangrowth, I think, has done great things for his team. And he uses Dragonite well. He has a couple different sets I've seen out of him. And then one of his favorite mons that he has that he wants to utilize more in the playoffs than he has in the regular season is his Surfetched. And if you use Surfetched right, that thing can also hit like a truck. So he has the pieces there to put a run together. His regular season, not as great, I think, as his standards are. I think he's a coach that expects to win a lot of games. I think he finished 7-5, if I remember correctly, to sneak into that 3 seed. So he expected a few more wins, but still had a successful season. And we're going to see how he does against Shock in round 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah, I've been kind of on the outside looking in as far as most of the stuff in your conference goes, because we were in different conferences in the league and didn't actually play. But yeah, Sen, I will say, his team is very strong on paper. Couple of pairings that I personally wouldn't have gone for, but overall a really solid team. I will say, I was actually, I don't want to say surprised, but maybe a little bit surprised with him not doing better, I guess, because I did follow a lot of his games in this league, and it seems to me like he had a few slip ups in a few games that kind of cost him, if you know what I mean. So still nice record, still nice team, but there were definitely a couple of slips there that I think, if not for those, he would have been a little bit higher.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think of the playoff matchup between him and the Shock?
Well, that is going to be another really close one, I think. So on his team, the one thing I see is a lot of weaknesses to fighting with like the Ferrothorn and the Heatran and the Umbreon, which are some really, really key mons that he brings just about every week, if not every week. But he does have the Dragonite and the Mimikyu that kind of, make up for that. As far as the matchup goes, I could really see this going either way, to be honest with you. I know they played, but I don't remember because they would have had to have played once. I don't recall who won that game, to be honest. I don't know if you know
I
offhand.
can look it up as we speak.
Okay.
The Shock won 6-3.
Okay, gotcha. So the Shock, speaking about them, I will say I think as far as how the coaches have been playing, to be honest with you, I've been more impressed with, I believe that's Bosa who coaches the Shock.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
correct.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've been more impressed with the way he plays, to be honest with you, not taking anything away from Sen, of course. Um, but not only that, but the team seems a little more well-rounded to me because that uh, Galarian Zapdos, which, as a side note, was an absolute steal for 7 points. I think we definitely got to fix that next season. But yeah, that thing has just run roughshod over like everybody. I think I'm looking at it right now. It's 9-1 ADR. In this season. So yeah, that thing ran roughshod. I love the Aegislash and the Rotom Heat, the Nido Queen, even the Rabombi. There's just so much on this team. There's a lot of versatility and there's a lot of power. So I think I would have to give the edge, all things considered, to the Shock in this match. I think it's definitely going to be close, and I'm definitely not writing Sen off by any means because he is definitely a good player, definitely has a good team. But from the way that I've seen both of these teams perform, again, on the outside looking in, I think the Shock probably have the edge.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. Like I said in the last matchup I talked about, I'm gonna take the team that's been more consistent. The Shock have by far been the more consistent of these two teams throughout the season. Sen's put up some good performances, but also lost to some teams he probably shouldn't have. But in this matchup, like you mentioned, the fighting weakness with the Heatran, the Ferrothorn, and the Umbreon, that's why I think Mimikyu is going to have to be a huge role in this match. I think Sen's going to have to use Mimikyu and Dragonite very well and still get some use out of Heatran if he wants to have a chance in this. I know he mentioned to me that he wants to bring Surfetch in the playoffs and really have Surfetch be a dominant performer in the playoffs. I don't see it in this matchup. I don't. I think Swordfetch is going to struggle if he brings it, and unless he brings some crazy set that I'd love to see. But I just think the matchup and the consistency favor the Shock. So I'm going to agree with you and go with the Shock here in this first round game.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing. I know a little something also about the struggle of in draft league wanting to use something versus needing to use something, and I think maybe that's where Sen is like he really likes Surfetched, he really wants to use Surfetched, but I agree with you 100%. Looking at the teams on paper, Surfetched has an abysmal match against the Shock, and even just one mon that has that bad of a matchup could easily cost him the game if he brings it. I mean, maybe he has a strategy with it that he's going to bring it and it's going to be awesome. That's very possible. But at the same time, I don't really see that being the more likely case in this situation. So yeah, I did the same thing in draft leagues before. Is you have ons that you like that you want to bring, and keeping everything fun and whatnot. But the unfortunate thing is that when you're facing teams that are as well put together and as well played as the Shock, doing something like that can easily cost you the game. So that's kind of the double-edged sword there.
Yeah, I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see the Surfetch come in and dominate. I just don't see it, but we'll have to see what happens. All right,
Absolutely.
moving on to number 5. We have the Miltanks, who their MVP is the Jellicent. They finished second in the Shield division, and they are the number 3 seed going up against the Litwicks in the first round. This coach, I thought they ended their regular season very, very well. I think they're one of the hotter teams going into the playoffs because I believe they got off to a pretty rough start, if I remember correctly. Don't think their record was all that great, like about 4 weeks in, but they picked it up late, really got going, and we have them at the number 5 spot.
Yep, I agree with you 100% there, and you're absolutely right. This was a team in the Miltanks that they really did get off to a very rocky start in the beginning of the league, and toward the middle and the end of the league they just got on a roll, simultaneously, when teams like you and I, which I think leapt out to a little bit stronger of a start, but then kind of lost it toward the middle and the end. This team was the exact opposite. They had that rocky start, but then they really found their groove, and then business picked up, and they put on some very strong and very dominating performances to get where they are today. In the playoffs. So, and speaking about the team specifically, I will say this team is really, really well rounded. I like it a lot. It has a really strong brass fire water core with the Cartana, the Entei, and the Jellicent. It also has Miltank, the namesake mascot of the team, which is a huge threat, particularly in draft leagues. The Diancie, really strong. The Silvally, really versatile, and don't forget the Porygon too as well. So this team is very well put together, honestly. And the coach Abomination, he's a bit of an odd player. He's very unconventional, which I believe has worked to his advantage in a big way in this league. So um, he's definitely got a good shot. However, he is going up against an absolute juggernaut of a team, in this first
Yeah.
round, a team that he did split with. So that's going to be another really close one.
Yeah, he put so much effort and enthusiasm into the rematch with the Litwicks that he came out with a fairly dominant win. If you watch that match, I think it was only like 3-0, but he was really in control the whole time and controlled that game. But he did lose earlier in the season. And like I said, I think that second match meant a lot more to him than it did to the Litwicks. I think he put a lot more into it. But I think,
Absolutely.
yeah. But I think one of the big keys, I think, for the Miltank's playoff run is they've talked multiple times throughout this season that they have not used that Cartana very well, that they haven't loved it as much as they thought they would. They just haven't got the use out of it. That was their top guy. That's their top pick. That's 9 points they spent on Cartana. They got to figure out a way to use that properly in the playoffs, I think, if they want to make a deep run.
Absolutely, especially when you're facing off against a team like the Litwicks, who has by far the highest differential of any team in the league, plus 30, I think it is, which
Yep.
is absolutely insane. So you want to talk about offensive power when we get to that team, so that is going to be a tall order. And if you're not either comfortable, and maybe that's the case with him, is maybe he doesn't have comfort or experience using Cartana, because our Cartana is a real powerhouse. But if you don't have that comfort or experience using it, that's really not going to be a good thing, especially when you're going up against a team with the offensive presence of the Litwicks.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I can't say enough about that. Their second half of their regular season, I thought it was awesome. I loved watching their matches when I got to see them. But again, round one, I think I'm leaning Litwicks, but I think this is gonna be a very close one. But I am gonna lean Litwicks just slightly.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I have to do that as well personally. Yeah, maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves with the predictions, but yeah, definitely.
All right, moving on to number 4. We have the Hellblaze Volcaronas. Their MVP going to their Clefable. They finished first in the Sword Division, and they are the number 1 seed in the Armor Division, I believe, or conference. I believe is what that conference is called now. They just added names last week or the week before, and they are going up against the Supersonics in round 1. So again, this is another team from your division. You want to talk about a little bit more of what you saw from them in the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it earlier, but the Volcaronas, I said this from day one, and I will say it again now because I still believe it. They have the best defensive core of any team in the league with the Zygarde, Clefable, Celesteela, Dragon, Fairy Steel core. I think the reason that they're not coming in higher here, even though so we have them at number 4 in your power rankings here, even though they are the number 1 seed, not just in my division but in the entire conference, is because they don't have a great differential. They have I think it's +9 differential,
Yeah.
which is still a very strong differential, but at the same time, for a team that's 9-3, if you look at it that way, that's not like a super big differential. Um, so I think that the team is just, again, it's really well put together. The coach really knows what he's doing. Tends to play slower games, and I think he plays probably better when he plays slower games. Now, unfortunately, as we all know, because of the infamous Gen 8 20-minute timer, that doesn't always work out, and playing slower games can definitely be detrimental to both players. But yeah, that's really, it's just a really strong team, and with a good coach. And I had trouble. I played him twice, like I mentioned, lost to him twice. The first time he was just sitting on his defensive core, and I couldn't get through it. The second time he brought more of an offensive set, which allowed me to punch through a little more. I will say I feel like I probably could have won that second match had I made a couple of better plays. I think I jumped out to a lead in the second game, which I believe was week 10 with him. And I made some mistakes that I think cost me the game. I think I was in the driver's seat to actually take the win. So the reason I bring that up is to kind of prove my point that I think he plays a better game defensively, this team and this coach. So if he wants to win, I think that's going to be what his strategy is.
Yeah, and you talked about his slow defensive game being successful for him and the low differential. And if you just look at his first 3 weeks of the season, that shows you right there. He won 6-6, 6-5, and 5-5. So that's why
Yep.
there's no differential. He was 3-0 at that point with a +1. So
Yeah.
just no one could kill his Mons. So that's if that's the
Yep.
type of style he needs to play. I don't think he should be ashamed of it. I know some people don't find it as fun, and I'm hoping. I know I've heard from some of the playoff coaches that they may go land timer for the playoffs. I hope they do, so we get that longer timer. But again,
Yeah.
I don't think he should shy away from a style that his team is built for, even if it's not always loved by every coach.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to agree with you because having been the victim of that, but I agree with you 100%. Personally, I'm not that kind of player. Like, I don't like playing the slow games, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's a strategy that is very prevalent in the game, and he does it very well. Like I said, I think that's his play style more and his team. And yeah, I think that if he sticks, he's definitely in the driver's seat. Although, as I mentioned before with the Supersonics, they could really be a dark horse here. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be clear, there's a difference between defensive playing and timer stalling. At no point, I've watched a lot of Lucas's games. At no point have I really thought he's timer stalled at all. I think he clicks his
Oh no,
moves
not
just fast and that, but he just has very defensive mons that are tough to kill.
at all. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not a timer stall. It's just a defensive team.
Yep.
That's yeah, and there is a difference for sure.
All right. So again, these top four might go a little bit quicker because we've already talked about the playoff matchup a little bit with the other team. So we talked about it with the Supersonics how it's gonna be a close game. Like I said, I think the Volcaronas just because I think they hid something a little bit in that last week, a set or two that they're gonna show up in the playoffs with and pick up a win. But again, the Supersonics are the team we know the least about. Newest coach in the league, only played a handful of games before playoffs. So, like you said, they're a dark horse, and can't wait to see this round one matchup.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on to our number three team. We have the Shock coming in at number three with their MVP being Aegislash. They finished first in the Shadow Division. They were the number two seed, and they go up against the Blazikins in the first round. So we did give MVP to Aegislash, and if you look at the stats, you see Galarian Zapdos right there with Aegislash, especially in kills, picking up a ton of them. But when I talked to him, he did actually mention the point that 8 of Zapdos' kills came against the it was one of his divisional opponents. I'm trying to remember. Zapdos got 8 kills just against the Ramp. No, it was the Molts. The Molts. Sorry, that's the team I was trying to think of. 8 of Zapdos' kills came against one team. So that's why he was quick to give Aegislash the MVP over Zapdos. Now, that does not mean Zapdos cannot be a threat. He has used Zapdos very well this season. And Galarian Zapdos, like you said earlier, 7 points was a steal, and that thing is a powerhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think I pretty well covered him before, but I'll echo the same sentiments again. The team is very well put together. The coach really knows what he's doing, and he's got powerhouse defensive mons, powerhouse offensive mons, mons that can do both. So he's definitely in a really really nice spot. I think he's right where he should be as far as the rankings go, in my opinion, coming in at number three, because he did have, he had a couple of mishaps, a couple of slip ups throughout the season, but all in all, he has been very consistent. He's got that plus 15 now differential, which is obviously very strong. He won his division. 10-2 record. Just yeah. I mean, it speaks for itself. I think it
Yeah,
really does.
and he had one very good late season pickup in my mind as well. He picked up that Nido Queen. I forget exactly what week he picked it up in, but that thing last 2 or 3 weeks of the season kind of controlled the entire match. He kind of ran his team through Nido Queen, especially against uh, the Vic Bolts. That's what I'm trying to think of. Against that Skarmory is the match that I focus on the most with it, where Nido Queen really controlled that match. So just adding another mon that he can do that with that late in the season was big for him, I think. And
Oh yeah.
you talk about a couple of his slip ups. He has those two losses. One of the two was a 6-0 loss against the Hydreigons, and he does not forget about that. He, again, I interviewed all the playoff coaches. He mentions that to me, and he definitely remembers that loss, and he wants to avenge it.
Yeah, that was actually, I remember that week, that game that I watched, and that was actually, I was pretty surprised watching that game. When I was watching that game, I was thinking, yeah, he's facing the Hydreigons, and they are an incredible team with a really strong coach. But I would have thought that he would have had an answer to come back, and that not happen to him. So I was pretty shocked, unintended, that his shock team had sustained that loss. So. Yeah, so that could definitely be, if it comes down to him and the Hydreigons, if they win their quarterfinals matches here, and it comes down to them, that could definitely be some extra gas in the tank, motivation for him to get that revenge win.
Yep. Now, he also mentioned, too, that he can't be looking ahead to that game already. He needs to focus on Sen round one. Make sure he takes care of the Blazekins, because if you look past an opponent in these playoffs, everyone in these playoffs are good enough to beat you. So don't sleep on the Blazekins in
Absolutely.
round one.
I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely. You cannot take any match for granted in these four playoffs matches, because if you do, you will lose. Absolutely. 100% agreed.
Yep. All right. Moving on to number two. We have the Litwicks with their MVP Tapu Koko. They were first in the Shield division, and they are the number 2 seed, and they are going up against the Miltanks in round one. It's another team from your side of the or your conference. Anything you want to add about them we
Yes.
haven't mentioned?
Well, I guess the only thing, and I think I did sing their praises, kind of sort of before, but this team is the offensive power of this team with the Tapu Koko is just incredible. The Mew is just so versatile, one of the most versatile Pokemon in the game. The defensive presence of the Mandiba is really strong, and it's a team that just has the capability of just running through you. And again, I think I touched on this earlier. Plus 30 differential. That is gigantic. That is plus 10 more than the next closest coach to him. Plus 10 more than the next closest coach to him. Like, that is a huge, huge number. And that's why I think we've given this guy the edge over the Shock and Bosa for the number 2 spot, because the performances, while he might have one more loss, the performances have been dominating. All in all, dominated. I don't think anyone dominated this guy at any point in the league. Yes, he has a few losses. We mentioned the one to the Miltanks, and we saw, or even you paid very close attention to that game, how much work the Miltanks had to put in to achieve that victory over this team, because it is a team that can just take you out. The offensive power is so real. So, and that plus 30 differential is just, I hate to do everything by the numbers, but at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. And those numbers are massive. So
Yeah.
this guy knows what he's doing. I don't know too much about him as a coach. I played him. He clapped me pretty hard. I'm not going to lie. It was a pretty demoralizing loss, if I remember correctly. When I played him, I lost like 5-0, I think. And I couldn't break through what he had going on. And then he was just able to set up and just wipe me out. So, he's very good at picking his spots, essentially. That's the thing about this team, is he'll set hazards. He'll play a defensive game, but the first opening that you give him, he will get in there with either Tapu Koko or another offensive threat and just run right through you. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So you mentioned at one point his Mew. His Mew is up there, Tapu Koko, right in the stats. Like he uses that Mew as well as I think any coach uses any singular mon in this league. He wanted Tapu Koko to be the MVP because he, especially one of the big reasons he says that electric typing of Tapu Koko was really big against his conference or his divisional opponents. So that's a big reason Tapu
Yeah.
Koko gets the MVP. But he uses that Mew just as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, the game that I had with him, that Mew set so many hazards on me that I was just eaten alive by hazards. I couldn't get him off the board, and it was my team just got eaten alive by hazards. So, but the thing is, obviously, you don't have to play Mew as a hazard setter because Mew, again, one of the most versatile Pokemon in the game. You can do so many different things with that thing that he's always going to have an element of surprise on his opponents with that thing. So
Yeah,
big
absolutely.
advantage.
And I want to throw one more thing out there. When you see the interviews later on in the video, they will be coming after the power rankings. I do believe I just called him the man. I didn't realize there was an H in his name, so I do apologize for that. It is the H man is the coach of the Litwicks. So when you hear me say it
Yes.
wrong later in the video, I'm correcting it now in the future, I guess. But again,
You got some time travel going on there.
yeah, he is playing the Miltanks in the first round. I think we've talked about that matchup quite a bit between the two teams now. They did play twice.
Yep.
They split those with the Miltanks almost acting like the second matchup was their championship almost. Like they put, again, so much into that. It was exciting to watch. I love seeing Coach with that much enthusiasm. But we'll see if he can do it again.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, and that only leaves us with one spot left, jumping up to the number one spot. You should know it by now, just process of elimination. We do have the Helgon Hydreigons at number one. Their MVP going to that Thunderous with that Rain team has just been a monster against opponents. He finished first in the Ice Division. He is the number one seed in that conference, and he's going up against the Vicavolts. So again, this is another team from my division that I got to play twice. I did go 0-2 against him. I believe I've played Blattle now 4 or 5 times throughout different draft leagues, and I think my last match was the closest I've ever come to beating him. It was like 4-3 or something. But I've never beaten him. I think he is one of the best draft league coaches I know, if not the best. I've mentioned in other videos that he's been my pick to win it for at least 3 weeks now. So I don't think there's much to talk about there from my side. He did go 10-2, like I said. He, again, one of the more consistent coaches we talked about earlier. Super consistent in his play. Always going to put up a good showing. Yeah, anything else you want to add about that team?
Yeah. So we did definitely mention it earlier, but this coach and this team is just really incredible, and so he is 10-2 with a +20 differential. So he there is a team that has a higher differential. There is a team that ties him for the win-loss record, but the consistency that this coach and this team have put forth is pretty incredible, I have to say. And only those 2 losses. I'd be remiss if I didn't throw out the fact that one of those 2 was to me. Actually, just had to throw it in there. But, and part of me doesn't really even know how that happened. But in any event, hashtag Poltegeist FTW. But anyway, yeah. But anyway, no, this team is incredible. The coach is incredible, and like I said, he won the league last season, so it's hard to bet against him in that situation. I'm a very by the numbers type of guy, and the numbers don't lie once again. And this guy he has the differential, he has the record, he has the team, very strong rain core on this team, and that's kind of what's carried him throughout most of his matches, I think. Just the combination, the Salamence, the Pelipper, the Thunderous, the Kabutops. Just there's a lot of options on this team. He can go screens with the Meowstic. The Chinchino can be a big player as well. The Bronzong can very defensive, very annoying to get rid of. So he has a lot of very well-rounded team, a lot of offensive and defensive presence on this team. And yeah, I'd say by the numbers, if you had to pick someone who is going to go all the way, just strictly looking at numbers, you would probably have to go with this guy, because combination of the team and the coach, just it's going to be hard for anybody to overcome. But I think there is, I'm going to amend what I said earlier. I think there are two teams that have the potential, at least a sizable potential, to get it done against him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
You mentioned some of the mons a little bit. That Bronzong, and that he ran screens Bronzong against me both matches, and apparently I didn't learn and got beat by that thing twice. So even with things like Pelipper and Kabutops and Thundurus and the Rain, like that Rain core right there, and then obviously Salamence on top of his team as well, he still beat me with Bronzong. So I mean, he has all that firepower, can still do it with some of the lesser mons. I know he had some dominant performances with that Shinshino as well. So, like I said, I don't put it past him to win with any of these mons on his roster. I think he can use them all very well. And yeah,
absolutely.
Like I said, at the end of the day, when we look at it in 3 weeks, I believe this is the team we'll see holding the championship trophy. But we'll have to see how it goes.
I guess it's time for predictions then. So that's going to be your prediction then to take home the gold.
Yeah, absolutely. My prediction is the Hydreigons.
Okay, so I guess it's time for me to explain why I think that there's a chance and who has a chance of taking him out. So,
yeah, go for it.
So here's the thing. This is how I see the tournament going down. I see, and this is no disrespect, all props to all of the other teams that are in that conference with the Hydreigons, but in my opinion, the Hydreigons are going to make the finals of this tournament. I think that the other three teams that he could potentially run into, they're very good coaches, good teams, but at the end of the day, I think that if he does what he needs to do, he has a great team, he's a very good player. I think that he is going to make it to the finals in the, I guess we're calling it the Crown Conference now, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So now on the other side, on the Armor Conference, which was the one that I was in, I think that there are two teams that have if either of these teams actually played him or not. And these are both two for different reasons now. And those are the Volcaronas and the Litwicks. So he didn't play the Volcaronas because his out of conference in this season, and I don't know who his out of conference opponent was in the Shield division.
He
I don't
did.
Know if did he play the Litwicks?
I just looked it up. He did play Litwicks and won 4-1 against the Litwicks.
Okay, yeah. So he did beat the Litwicks. Okay, so, however, granted that, I'm still going to say that, because I think that, to be honest with you, here's my prediction for the Armor Conference. I think that either the Litwicks or the Volcaronas are going to end up facing the Hydreigons in the championship. So I think those I think we rank them in the power rankings. Those are the top three teams. I think that it could be either the Hydreigons versus the Volcaronas or the Hydreigons versus the Litwicks in the championship game. Now, the reason I think that the Litwicks have a good chance to beat him is from an offensive standpoint. So we talked about the differential, the massive plus 30 differential, the sheer offensive presence that this team can provide. I think if the Litwicks can outpace the Hydreigons, that's going to be the name of the game, is who can outpace the other offensively. So if the Litwicks can get themselves in a position that they can shut the rain off, they can outpace the Hydreigons offensively, they can get that win. So they have a shot. They have a strong shot from that perspective, in my opinion. Now, the Volcaronas, on the other hand, they have a strong shot from a defensive perspective. So if the Volcaronas can play that insanely good defensive game that we know that they can play, as I mentioned before, I feel that the Volcaronas have a very, very strong shot of being able to defeat the Hydreigons if that is the championship game. So that's what I said. I think either of those teams have a really good shot of getting it done against the Hydreigons. If we're going to say who we think is going to win the entire league. You're going to go with the Hydreigon's. My pick is going to be the Volcaronas. And here's why, is because the best offense is a good defense. And no, yeah, not to be cliche or generic, but you know what? I'm going to be cliche and generic. The Volcaronas and that coach, Lucas, play an impeccable game defensively. So if he plays the defensive game with the Hydreigons, I think he's going to get it done. And that's my prediction. The Volcaronas go all the way and take the championship.
Now, I can very much see that. I'm actually leaning in that armor conference. I'm leaning towards the Litwicks pulling out the upset against the Volcaronas and making it to the championship against Hydreigons. But if the Volcaronas make it, I believe the Volcaronas have a better chance of winning that matchup because they're the only other roster in the league that controls weather. They can try to shut down that rain with their Torkoal and bringing up their own sun. So that's
Yeah.
the only potential weather battle against the Hydreigons, because if not, they kind of got rain for free against other teams.
Yeah, and that's not good.
Yeah.
Rain for free is not good for by any stretch of the imagination. So, yeah, so I do agree with you there definitely. If that's really going to be the challenge. And again, I think the Litwicks definitely have a strong shot of beating the Hydreigons. But if I had to say which of those teams I think has a better shot at beating the Hydreigons, it's got to be the Volcaronas.
Yep,
So
I
then
agree.
the question would become, can the Volcaronas get there?
Yeah, that's where I think their biggest struggle is going to be. I think it's going to be getting past the Litwicks first, and then worry about the championship.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Well, those are our predictions. If you guys want to, feel free to leave your predictions in the comments or anything. Let us know what you think. I think that's all we got. Thanks again for joining me.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, and it's been a blast.
Yep, and I'll make sure to link his your YouTube, right? Not Twitch. You're on your YouTube.
I am youtube.com, Captain Beanard. Mostly Pokemon stuff, some other random stuff that you might enjoy, podcasts and whatnot from time to time. So stop by and check it out if you want.
Yep, and I'll make sure to link that in the description. Yeah, so go check out his channel. Thanks for watching, guys. It's been a fun season, and good luck to all the playoff teams.
Yes, indeed. Good luck to all, and we will see you next time.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the power ranking segment and us talking about those playoff matchups. Next up in the show is coach interviews. I interviewed every one of the playoff coaches and just got 4 to 6 questions for them. Got their answers, talked a little bit about them, what they expect from the playoffs. And yeah, here are their answers. This was the first time I've ever interviewed anyone, and I'm sure it's a lot of time anyone's ever been interviewed here. So apologize for any of the awkwardness. I do plan on doing interviews next season as well with who I give Coach of the Week to each week. So I do think I'll get better at these. So bear with some of the awkwardness, but I thought some of them went really well, or most of them. And again, I appreciate all the coaches agreeing to do it. So yeah, I'll stop rambling and let you hear the interviews with the playoff coaches. Hey, what's up, guys? First coach here I'm interviewing is Coach Bosif of the Detroit Shock. Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask him a few questions about his season and see what he thinks. So, first question I have for you, I watched, I believe all of your battles are close to it, and I think Galarian Zapdos and Aegislash were by far your two best Mons. If you had to pick one as the MVP of your team this season, which one would you give it to?
I would definitely go with Aegislash, just solely based on the fact that it came to every game, and it did more than Zapdos did, even though it might look like it was sort of a tie. Mostly because Zapdos, the only reason it has so many kills is because it picked up 4 against the Molts twice. So it got 8 kills against the Molts. That's where almost all of his kills came from.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. I thought the Zapdos kind of had more sweeping in some matches, but the Aegislash was definitely the more consistent threat throughout the season.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, if you had to pick a Mon on your team that was kind of the X factor besides those two, that was kind of key to you winning as many matches as you did, who would you give that to?
I would have to give it to Slowbro. I think Slowbro has to be the one because it gives you so much momentum with teleport. And not only that, but it can also be like a late game sweeper in some instances, which I tried to pull off against Lucas. And I think if I was able to deal with the Clefable, I would have been able to. But Slowbro just gives you so many switch in opportunities and momentum with teleport that I can't give it to anybody else. If I had Nidoqueen earlier in the season, maybe Nidoqueen, but I only had it for a few weeks, and it has put in work for me so far too. But Slowbro is my choice for sure.
Yeah, I know the Needle Queen definitely helped you last week against that Skarmory.
And it did similar this week against the ace in his, I think it's Scizors.
Yeah, gotcha. I have not had a chance to watch your one this week quite yet. But yeah, Slowbro's a great mon. That's who I was kind of expecting your answer to be, if I was honest.
Yeah.
Next up, if do you have a key moment you thought in this season, either a key play within a match or a key match that you thought really defined your season?
So it's going to sound weird, but I'm going to go with where I got swept. So I lost 06 against Bladdle's team. And I thought that I had good answers to his mons, but had I not had that game, I wouldn't have learned what needs to be done when I have to face him in playoffs potentially. So, fun fact, I didn't know that Thundurus this generation got access to Weather Ball, and that just swept through my whole team. So now I'm definitely more prepared for it this second time around, assuming I beat Sen and Blattle beats Cossack. So hopefully we can not get swept by a Weather Ball Thundurus again.
Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely watched that match, and yeah, that weather ball that caused some damage for sure. Actually, watching that match helped my last match with Blattle because I planned for that weather ball a little bit. Still, I took the loss, but definitely watching that match showed me be ready for the weather ball in the rain.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of leads into my next question. I was going to ask, who do you see as the biggest threat in the playoffs? Is it Blattle who swept you?
I think it's Blattle. Mid-season, one of the reasons I picked up Nidoqueen was to prep for a potential finals match against Lucas. If I had to face the Clefable again. So that I feel a lot better against him for that matchup. That was my only other loss this season. So Blattle is going to take some additional prep now that I've gotten some intel from our first battle. But obviously, I have to get through Sen first. But I think Blattle is my my rival here going into the playoffs.
Okay. And final question: what one thing do you think needs to go right for you to make a championship run?
I don't want to give up too much about how I plan on taking on Blattle.
That's fair.
Obviously, like I said, I need to beat Sen first. But what I have planned for Blattle is a pretty specific answer to his Thundurus, and I need it to work.
All right. Well, I'm hoping that match happens. I would look forward to seeing whatever that answer is.
I look forward to seeing it too.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thanks for agreeing to do this interview, and good luck to you in the playoffs.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you make a run at playoffs next season.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. Next up, we are joined by Abomination, coach of the Miltanks. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing perfect. Doing great.
Glad to hear that. All right. So, again, just going to go through a couple quick questions for you. First off, if you had to for your team this season, who would you name as your MVP Pokemon?
Either Jellicent or Diancie. I would say one of those two.
All right. Any reason why, particularly one of those two?
Well, both of them have been taking a lot of hits and actually doing more damage than I thought they were going to do. I actually got a sweep 6-0 with Diancie, and Jellicent did very good when I brought Water Spout one time, so they're just memorable to me.
Okay. That actually kind of leads into my next question a little bit. I was going to ask if you have a most memorable or biggest moment or match this season, something you think led to a successful playoff season.
Uh, not well. Obviously, what I just said, like I got really fired up when I did really well in those games.
Yeah.
Um, at the beginning of the season, I was kind of going like 1-1, or like I was staying 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, and then I started just rolling, just kept going, and it started off with uh, the Dioncy thing. So maybe she had something to do with it, but
Nice. The
I don't know.
DNC starting off the win streak for you.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Next question. Who do you see as the biggest threat other than yourself in the playoffs? Like, who do you see as the biggest opponent?
That's a good question. I am intimidated by the Hellblaze Volcarona's team the most, but I haven't really looked at the other teams on the other conference that much.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Uh,
I know that Volcarona team has caused problems for people. It's so bulky.
yes, it is. It's very.
All right.
If I,
Uh,
yeah.
what is one thing you think needs to go right for your team in the playoffs, or something you have planned to go right for you to win a championship?
I need to not push the wrong button. I seem to do that like often. In my last match, I pushed parting shot against a Registeel, and it has clear body, so it just was immune to it and it killed me. Some stuff like that just can't happen. I can't fumble under pressure. And I have to bring hazard removal.
Yeah.
I don't want to be hazards. I want to be hazard. I don't want to be stuck with hazards.
Yeah, gotcha.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, makes total sense. All right, last question. Is there anything you want to add or any message you want to send to the other coaches in the playoffs? Any parting message you want to give to the people watching?
Well, I feel like everyone's going to say this, but I want to win. So if you're my enemy, then watch out, I guess.
Very well said. All right. Well, again, that's all the questions I had. Thanks for agreeing to do this, and good luck in the playoffs.
Yeah, thanks. You're welcome. We'll be looking forward to watching the rest of this video.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So next coach I have joining me for an interview is Coach Blattle. He is the coach of the Helgon Hydragons, who finished the season, I believe, 10-2 with a +20 differential. So thanks for joining me, Blattle.
No problem, man. My pleasure.
All right. So first question I'm going to ask is, if you look at the stats of the league, up there in the top 5 is your Thunderous. If you were to name an MVP, would you give it to Thunderous, or would it be one of your other mons?
I would definitely give it to Thunderous. It has been an amazing member of my team, between dealing heavy damage, claiming a lot of KOs. In basically almost every battle, it has shown itself to be probably the best. So yeah, I would absolutely give it to Thunderous.
Do you have an X Factor second place, somebody that doesn't show up as much but has been important in some of the wins?
I would say either Pelipper, Kabutops, or Chinchino.
All right. Next question. Do you have like a biggest moment of the season or biggest match, something you think kind of propelled you to a successful season?
Honestly, I would say my Week 6 battle versus Cossack. I came off of a really heavy loss against Captain Beanard in Week 5. It was like 6-2, something like that. So being able to come back and get a 4-0 win really basically propelled me for the rest.
So moving on. Next question. Who do you see as the biggest threat of the other playoff teams?
In like the entirety of the playoffs, I would probably say Lucas.
Okay. Anything specific about his team kind of worry you, or just overall the team itself?
Uh, Mainly the Fairy Dragon Steel Core, but also because he's the only other coach in the playoffs to have a to have a weather team other than myself.
Gotcha. Yep. All right. And what is something you think needs to go right in the playoffs for you to walk away with a championship? Something you need to make sure you either correct a mistake you've made or something you just need to continue to do right?
I think probably that's kind of hard to say. Probably more so innovating because a lot of the teams that I'm gonna be facing are teams that I have already faced before in the division. So I want to be more innovative in my sets, which is something that I always strive to be better at.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thanks again for joining me.
My pleasure, man.
All right. And good luck to you in the playoffs. Hope you do well.
Thank you. Good luck to you next season.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Next up, we have Coach Iston of the Supersonics. And thank you for joining me.
Oh yeah, a pleasure.
So, yeah, we're just going to jump right into it, ask a couple questions, and talk about your season a little bit. So, first off, if you had to name a team MVP, who would you give that to?
Man, that's a hard question. So I took this team over, I think, 5 weeks ago or so, and revamped the whole thing. So everything's kind of still been falling into place for me. The team divides really, really nicely. I have some nice, really versatile offensive pieces. If I had to pick one that's been the best for me thus far, I think so far it's probably been Jirachi. It bailed me out in a game against, I think it was Checkmate, where we got into a calm mind war between a Klefki and a Rachi, and it managed to pull that out. So probably just thus far it's been Rachi, but a lot of other pieces have really been key in the last 5 weeks. Gergeist has been big. Garbodor has been big as a kind of low tier pickup. But overall, I'd say Jirachi is kind of the centerpiece of the team.
Gotcha. So you kind of mentioned it in that answer a little bit too. I believe you are the only replacement coach that will be or might be in the playoffs. And that what's the difference between, or what's the biggest difference in a draft league between starting with a team, getting drafted yourself, and taking over for a team halfway through a season?
That's a good question. I feel like when you start with a team, you have a little bit more space to kind of get to know things, to try something new, or to draft something you're comfortable with. For me as a player, oftentimes when I draft my own team, I kind of give myself a little bit more time to kind of get used to something. Jumping into a season like this, especially a season where I wanted to kind of come in and people here don't really know me, and I wanted to kind of prove myself early on and start strong. I feel like there's a little bit more pressure to kind of make some transactions, restructure the team and get something that you can work with immediately and go from there.
Right.
At least in my mind, that's kind of the approach that I come in with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's clearly worked. You turn the team around and find yourself right on the doorstep of playoffs.
Yeah.
Next.
It's been a fun run for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question. I don't know how well it's going to apply to you as it did to some of the other coaches I asked it, but I asked everyone kind of what they think the biggest moment of the season or most important match of the season was. You obviously have less to draw from, but was there kind of a moment where you thought, oh, this team can make playoffs, or something that led to the team picking up some wins?
I think that the most important match for me thus far was actually the first match that I played. That was versus the is it the Athabasca Miltanks?
Yeah.
That one really, I think, I play a ton on Showdown. I'm a fairly experienced coach, I'd like to think. And this was my first Wi-Fi match since the generation came around, and so I felt like I played really, really well, but I played a little bit too slowly. Took a little bit too much time thinking about some turns. Kind of took a little while to get into my offense and kind of played a little bit passively. And as a result, I felt like I was positioned to win in the longer game, but I lost due to timer, and that kind of pushed me as well because I was like, it put a little bit of a fire under me to be like, I need to play faster, more aggressively. I need to get into my offense sooner. And I'm not going to let that happen to me again, was kind of the attitude. Is like, I don't want to outplay somebody and then lose because I took too much time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always hard when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question is going to the playoffs. Almost all the teams are set at the point where we're doing this. I know there's a couple that are still up in the air. Between you and the Pidgeys is a big one. But
Yeah, I actually clinched this morning. If you,
oh, did you? I
I'm
did
not sure if
not.
you saw.
I did not see your match yet.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So congrats on that. Like I said, I hadn't seen
Thank
that.
you.
So looking at the playoff teams on both conferences, who do you see as the biggest threat come playoffs?
Man, so I think that I have to. So round one is set at this point. I have to play Lucas again, and I felt like I had some. You obviously haven't seen the game yet, but when you do see it, you'll see that I had some strokes of luck that went my way. I felt like I was positioned well early, and I probably could have, won the game regardless. But some things definitely were unfortunate for him. Uh, and so I'm gonna have to come back into that game. And typically, like what you find in rematches, in my experience, is that the loser frequently has the advantage. Especially if, if the teams are kind of held constant, roughly equal. Like if the matchup isn't really skewed, the loser can kind of better learn from their mistakes and come back and bring a lot of energy and a lot of threatening stuff. Lucas is a really, really early threat. On the other side of the conference, I think Andrew and Bladdle are both really very experienced and solid coaches. Bladdle's got a team that really, really takes advantage of how much of a threat Thunderous can be in the rain. And Andrew, of course, has stuff that he's really comfortable with Aegis Slash, and all the way down that roster. So I'd say that those three really are the people that I look at as very, very experienced people. Especially if we end up playing these battles on land, those are the people who I'm really scared of, and or I shouldn't say scared of, but like who I feel like can really play in a long game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Those have kind of been the consistent answers I've been getting is Lucas and
Mm-hmm.
Bladdle, and then you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Andrew as well. Yep, those are some
Yeah.
of the. And if you look at the standings, records wise, that kind of holds true.
Yeah, I think consistency is huge in draft leagues. I have a buddy of mine who's a good, like, very, very solid established Smogon player who his comment is that the most important thing in Pokemon is consistency. The best players can come into any environment, any match, and consistently put up 88 to 85% win percentages. And I think that's what you're seeing from people here is that people like Bladdle and Bo, Andrew, they have very, very well established consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. So one final question I got is, you've kind of talked about some aspects of it, but for you to win a championship in this league this season, what is either a mistake you think you need to limit in the playoffs, or something that needs to go your way in the playoffs to lead to a championship?
To me, I think it comes down to how are we doing our matches in terms of, I think Lucas made a suggestion that possibly we'll go to land timer in the playoffs to allow the games to be a little bit longer.
Yeah, which I'm a big fan of,
And
by the way.
I would be a very big fan of that as well. If uh, if we continue with the 20-minute timer, I think the key for me is going to be to be aggressive and play quickly. I'm a pretty contemplative player generally. I like to take a little bit to think about things, but you really can't afford that time in Wi-Fi. And if we switch to the land timer, I think also I'll still have to play pretty quickly there. 10 minutes on a chess timer isn't that much, but also I think that's going to be a matter of. It's really going to be a matter of matchups. I have to play Lucas for the second time, so I'm going to have to kind of, reconfigure my prep. I'm going to have to find a way to solve the second round. There's a couple coaches I've played in that other division that I haven't played here, just due to the fact that I was a substitute.
Yeah.
And then I think for me, like the I just have to limit risks. One of the things that I'm trying to learn as a player right now is to find mid grounds consistently, to predict as little as possible to win the game. And I think that like a habit I got into early in my career that like has hurt me, like getting better in draft, is the tendency to enjoy risks that aren't worth it. And out of that mentality of like feeling like you have to predict or feeling like you want to predict comes mistakes that cost you Pokemon, and especially like if you're not looking in the long term, the game.
Yeah, absolutely. If you bring, you bring something cool or you bring something different, you want to make that prediction, make sure it pans out. But like you said, a lot of times that play is not worth it in the long run.
Yeah, and I think that like people don't realize that like the goal of your prep should be to make your play as easy as possible. You know, make it so that the mistakes that you make are fairly small and inconsequential, and make it so that you don't have to try and like guess every turn exactly what your opponent's going to do to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more. All right, well, that's all the questions I have. Thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Again, it was a pleasure.
Yep, and good luck to you in the playoffs. Hope you do well.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, guys, next up we have Coach Kosak. He is the coach of the Grayling Vicavolts. And thank you for joining me, man.
Yeah, glad to be here.
All right, so first question, I'm just going to jump right into it. If you had to name a team MVP for your team this season, who would you give that to?
That's a tough one. It's probably a tight race between Cinderace, Skarmory, or Dragapult. I think Cinderace just narrowly takes that lead, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I still think it's crazy you were able to get Cinderace and Dragapult.
Oh yeah, I couldn't believe it when it happened either.
Yeah. I figured your answer would be between one of those two. I did not think Skarmory would be in that conversation, but he has been big for you as well. I've watched quite a few of your games, so.
Yeah, he's kind of anchored my bulk core, and that's pretty important for a lot of the pivoting and stuff that I often have to do to get Dragapult and Cinderace into position.
Yeah, absolutely. If you had to name an X factor for your team, somebody that's less known, that maybe hasn't come to every game, but has maybe led to a win or two along the way, who would you give that to?
That one, I'd say it's either got to be Skuntank or Ludicolo. They haven't posted a bunch of kills or anything like that, but Ludicolo, after adding it to my team, it's significantly upped my defensive capabilities. It's given me a lot of the resistances that I was lacking that I needed. And Skuntank has tanked the hits it needs to tank and has, in most scenarios, died at the correct times to allow me to get in Cinderace or Dragapult and start knocking stuff out.
Yep, gotcha. All right, next question is, what do you think the biggest either moment or match of your season was? Something that kind of led to some wins that got you into the playoff position you're in.
Well, that's a kind of a difficult one because my season's been very up and down. I mean, for the first 6 weeks, I was winning every other week and losing every other week. So like, there wasn't really anything that got me going on like a winning streak or anything like that. I don't think I've had more than a 2-game winning streak this whole season, but I'd say I think the crowning achievement on my team was beating Lucas's team while it was still undefeated. I think that was a pretty big win to pick up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the first few weeks of the season, people were struggling against that defensive core of his.
Yeah, that team is tough to break.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of along those lines, you talked about his team a little bit. Who do you see as the biggest threat of the other playoff teams?
That one's gonna probably be either Andrew or Blattle. Those are both teams that I've struggled significantly against. I mean, Blattle blew me out the last time we faced each other, and Andrew and I have had two of the closest battles that either of us has had this entire season. So,
yeah, I think your team against either one of those could be a very great matchup. I would love to see it. And final question, just got one more for you. What is either a mistake you think you need to limit or something you need to do differently or even continue to do correctly in the playoffs? What's something you need to do to lead to a championship in your mind?
well, some of that's going to depend on which team I'm facing, because I think in Blattle's case, for sure, I'm going to have to be a lot more cautious around that rain core. That's what blew me out last time, and I've taken some measures and kind of looked at my team a little bit differently to try and shore that up, but it's still scary, and it's definitely something I have to take into account a lot more than I did when I first faced him. Other than that, I think I'm going to have to adjust how I'm playing my team. I've been playing, especially in these recent weeks, since I've been trying to kind of either keep things close or get myself into a position to blow my opponent out, and hasn't really worked out on the blowing out part. But keeping things close, I'm gonna have to be more aggressive, I think, going into the playoffs here.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if we're still on the 20-minute timer. I know other coaches have mentioned that 20-minute timer forces you to kind of try to play aggressive to get through it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I got for you. Thank you again for joining me.
Yep.
And good luck to you in the playoffs. Wish the best for you.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
All right. Next up, everyone, we have the man joining us. He is coach of the Maryland Litwicks. Thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
All right. So, first question I got for you is when you look at the league standings and everything, the rankings, your differential is way by far the best and blowing everyone else out. What's led to that? How have you been able to have such a crazy differential this season?
I mean, honestly, I feel like I embraced the timer. You know, like when I was building, I built to end the games in 20 minutes, and I feel like that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. That timer causes a lot of problems for a lot of people. So getting through it's always nice.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like only one of my games went to timer, and that was basically over anyways.
Gotcha. Next up, looking at those stats a little bit more, you have two Pokemon that are on top of kill leader list, and that's Mew and Tapu Koko. If you had to pick one as your team MVP, which one would you give it to?
I would give it to Coco for sure, because a lot of teams are weak to electric types in my division, so it did a lot of work overall.
Gotcha. If you had to pick a Pokemon that was kind of a unsung hero or an X factor besides those two, somebody that did a lot of work for you throughout the season, who would you name there?
Definitely Flygon. I mean, it's not shown in stats and all that, but my team is weak to a couple of things, and Flygon kind of patches all that up.
Gotcha, perfect. I've always loved Flygon too. Next question. What was your either biggest moment or you think your best match of the year that kind of led you to that playoff run that you're on?
That's a bit rough. I don't know. I mean, I started off quite well in the first couple of games. Could even pick the first one maybe, or any one of the first divisional games, because I went 3-0, and like all of them went quite smoothly. So I don't know if I can pick any because it's been a while, but yeah, that was a really good start to have.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can go 3-0 in the division in the first 3 weeks, you're off to a fantastic start. Next question. Who do you see as the biggest threat in the playoffs? Who are you the most worried about?
I think it's Lucas, because I gotta play him like even if I went through round one, and his defensive core is really scary, especially if we consider we're playing with the timer. It's quite hard to break that.
Yeah, absolutely. You are definitely not the only one to name his team as the scariest. That defensive core he has is nuts.
Yeah.
All right, and final question. If you're going to win a championship this season, what do you think needs to go right or what do you need to do well in the playoffs?
Again, I'm gonna go with if I win the first round, the game against Lucas, I need to get some plays right to like gain and never let the momentum go, and so that I can break a score. Because there's no other way that I can win that game.
All right, yeah, great answer. All right, well, that's all the questions I have for you. Thanks again for joining me, and good luck to you in the playoffs.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. All right, next up, we have Just Lucas, coach of the Hellblaze Volcaronas. Unfortunately, this one's going to be a little bit different because of time zones, really. We weren't able to set up a time that we could do the interview that worked for both of us. So, unfortunately, I did just message him the questions and he answered them back. So, I'm just going to kind of read his answers. So, we won't get to hear him in this one, but these are his answers that he gave. So, first off, I asked him who he thought his team MVP was, and I mentioned that Clefable really dominated stats for his team, and if that would be his choice. His words, again, I'm just going to quote him word for word on all of these. He said, yes, I need to say that Clef was truly the MVP on both sides, offensive and defensive. It helped me deal with setup threats, and Mons, my team, didn't have good chances taking on otherwise. On the offensive side, it helped me break and sweep teams with no problems at all because teams looked at it as a defensive Mon, but it caught them off guard and was able to destroy them on the offensive side. So that was his answer to that. Next up, I asked him who was a Mon on his team that doesn't show up in the stats as much, but he found just as important. His answer is, not going to lie, I think Shiftry. It always was able to pick up at least 1 or 2 kills in Sun because its speed, and its sheer offensive power made it so that people had to worry about Shiftry on top of my whole defensive core. So yeah, again, we talked about his defensive core throughout this video and with different coaches, but then having that Shiftry that can kind of sneak in and attack in that Sun is big, so he named that Shiftry as his X Factor. Next, I asked him, what was the number 1 moment, play, or match that was most important for your team to go on this playoff run? His answer is, I mean, it didn't really help me, but my number 1 moment was when my Celesteela missed 3 Leech Seeds in a row, and this caused it to die. But that's just some fun time. I think overall what helped me achieve playoffs was the fact that I had a huge jump start at the beginning of the season. So much like we heard the Litwick's coach mention, getting off to that hot start to start the season. I know he was also 3-0 in division, really just set you up for success in the season. So that was his answer to that. Next up, I asked who does he see as the biggest threat in the playoffs, like I have the other coaches. His answer is that he really thinks that all those people are a threat because there's so much skill involved. But if he had to pick one, he would say his round 1 opponent because he lost to him just last week, so he really needs to go all out on him. He did just lose to the Supersonics, and that's the team he's talking about. He did, like I said, just lost them last week of the regular season, so he does play him again in round 1. So that was his answer to that. But I completely agree when he says all the teams are a threat. I think these playoffs are pretty stacked, and I'm excited to see the matches. Final question, I asked him what needs to go right for him to go on a playoff run and win the championship. He said, I think in order to win this, I need to put a flawless performance and solid prep combined with solid execution of the game. Gameplay I hopefully will have. His alternate answer was he could just hacks his way to victory and not regret anything, which is funny. But yeah, he just wants to play well, make the right decisions, make the right prep, and hopefully that leads to a championship for him. So again, sorry I wasn't actually able to get Lucas here for this interview. I read his text answers for y'all. But yeah, thank you, Lucas, for at least sending me those so we had something here. And good luck to you in the playoffs.
Awesome.
All right, and last coach up here, we have Sen himself, coach of the Blazikins. Thanks again for joining me.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're just going to jump right into it.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Awesome. Let's go.
All right, first question I have for you is if you look at the stats for your team, Dragonite has been your big kill leader for the season. If you had to give a team MVP, would you give it to Dragonite or would it be somebody else on your team?
It'd definitely be Dragonite. I mean, that Mon is just so versatile. That multi-scale ability is just so good and so broken at times. I mean, he's like a designated weakness policy Mon, like made perfect for that item. And not just that, I mean, he's just so good. He definitely deserves it. I mean, he could run both special, both physical, and there's some other sets right there that I haven't unwinded yet, and hopefully this week when I go up, I could demonstrate a new set. We'll see how it goes, man.
All right, cool. So outside of Dragonite, if you had to name like an X Factor or maybe something that doesn't show up in the stats as much that's been important to your team, who do you think that is?
I'd say Surfetch. I mean, you and I have like seen what I've done with Surfetch in the Shadow Realm Draft League, and I feel like in this league I haven't really made him shine as much as I did that league. So yeah, he's definitely like my whatchamacallit, my dark horse, my knight.
Gotcha. All right. Next question for you is, if you could name either one single play, one moment, or a whole match this season that was kind of the biggest for your team to get you to the playoffs that you're in now, what moment or match would you give that to?
I mean, I got several matches. I have to say, the match that really mattered, that really put me on the spot up there too. I think it was between Coffee and I, where I did that huge sweep, which was very that win was important. And then the match that we had between ourselves, that was a very intense match.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so who do you see as the biggest threat come playoffs?
It has to be the okay. So biggest threat I see is the H men. What is this coach of the? I forget his team name.
Is that the Litwicks?
Yeah, the Litwicks. Yeah, the Litwicks. I really want to go up against him, see what he's about. But there's also a team that I know that if he plays right, his team is very good, especially the way he's been playing. Abomination, coach of the Mill Tanks. Man, they I really want to go up against them. Hopefully, I get a chance to go up against them. We'll see. We'll see if I get past Andrew, because Andrew's a very tough coach. Don't get me wrong, but I'm gonna go in with it.
All right.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready. Sorry about that.
No,
You probably got that back thing.
No, you're good. You're good. I just got one final question for you. What needs to go right, or what do you need to do well in the playoffs to win a championship this season?
I gotta take my team prep to another level. Like, see every single base scenario. Like, say for example, I create one set. I gotta take in factor every single mon in the opponent's team and call to see their max damage input on every single mon. Like, say for example, I'm gonna bring in Heat Ren, and then he has a ground type. Like, I have to anticipate that and have a play beforehand. You know what I mean? I gotta really coordinate my team. I haven't really been coordinating, as you know. I was in 2 leagues. I just ended the YCL season. Now I'm in playoffs here, so I could fully concentrate on here. So it's gonna be good. Like, I'm planning to take it all. Let's see how it goes, man. It's gonna be a pretty tough playoffs. We got very good players in there. Lucas, Andrew, the H men, Bladel. Definitely, I need to go against Bladel. I need to counter that rain, and yeah, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. Should be a very fun playoffs. Well,
Definitely looking forward to it.
Yep. Well, thank you again for joining me. That's all the questions I have. Good luck to you and your team in the playoffs.
Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate the interview. It means a lot.
Thanks.
RoDL, here I come, man. Let's go.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, guys, and that's all the interviews. We've come to the end of the show. We've gone through all the playoff matchups, all the playoff power rankings. We've heard from all the playoff coaches. I just wanted to real quick address a couple mistakes I noticed as I was recording this, and it was a little too late for me to fix. The scrolling thing you see at the bottom at the beginning, where I kind of show the scores scrolling down the bottom, I forgot to update those. So those are from week 11, not week 12, so I apologize for that. I did say the Litwicks coach's name in the interview. I just called him the man. I didn't see the H in there. It is H-man. If I mispronounced any other coaches' names, I apologize. That's the only one I caught. And then the only other mistake I caught was when we did talking about the power rankings for the teams. The Vicavolts MVP should have been Cinderace, not Dragapult. But not a big deal. Both of them had very good seasons. So all that being said, I think that's all the mistakes I caught. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. I put a lot of work into this. This took me many, many hours to get this whole thing set up and done. But I love doing it. I appreciate all the support. I will bring it back next season, every single week. So, all that being said, please leave some comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. But yeah, this is going to be my final one. I'm not going to do one for each week of the playoffs. It's going to be the one playoff special. And yeah, I'm excited to see how the playoffs go, see who comes out on top. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you all next season. That's all I got. I hope wish you all a good night, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.